And we are live. Welcome, Russ here. Neuro Bros Show, episode number 14. Without my co-pilot Karl here, he's down in Mexico, San Luis, Mexico, doing more great things for people with Parkinson's. Doing another one of his Parkinson's regeneration training workshops down there. I'm sure he's enjoying himself too. We've got some beautiful weather here out on Long Island. Hope it's nice by you and you're having a good day. I had a few topics I wanted to talk about today. One is I like having mantras and favorite words, and I like the word limitless and fearless as well. They all end in less and relentless, but I want to talk about the limitless mindset today. And another thing I wanted to talk about is mindful movement, specifically when doing daily tasks. Some people struggle with Parkinson's, some people struggle with daily tasks of living, whether it's putting on clothes or tying their shoes, brushing their teeth, eating, whatever it might be. And I just want to talk about some ways that you could possibly overcome problems with those things using mindful movement. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this limitless mindset, and I was thinking about, I just had a hip operation recently. I'm going on my third week now. It was April 28th. It was just about the beginning of the month. So most of my post surgery recovery is in May now. So a little bit more than a couple of weeks into it, and it made me think of this topic a little bit because my hip is doing well. As far as being able to walk, limited pain, had some problems with swelling, but I've addressed that with icing and compression. But I had some major problems actually with my Parkinson's symptoms, and everything seems to tie into medication. And I just found the whole thing interesting as far as mindset goes. In my discussions with when I called into the surgeon's office, the discussion with the nurse and discussions I've had with the doctors, the things they take into consideration as far as contraindications and interactions with medications fit into this whole concept of living in a box. The world is a lot of times very specialized. So the doctors and surgeons, like orthopedic surgeons, have their specialty, and there's many great professionals out there who are very adept at what they do. And one thing they do, which is not a bad thing, is they follow protocols. But sometimes we get placed into these boxes where we've been living so long with certain protocols that are based on limited. I would just say limited way of thinking. They follow a certain sequence of research and what they decide what they're going to include and not include as far as validity goes. And I just think that whole way of thinking sometimes needs to be rethought. And for instance, in the world of Parkinson's, as far as where we're looking, where like scientists and researchers are looking to find cures and solutions for the disease and treatments, perhaps they've been barking up the wrong tree. And when you see all these studies that look promising, and then they kind of disappear, you don't see follow up on them, and sometimes a lot of times I think the problem is that they just keep looking in the same areas. And I think we need to broaden our horizons. So in treatment of Parkinson's disease, there's still a lot of medical professionals out there who aren't considering exercise and diet and that type of thing. So let me jump back to my surgery. So what happened was I came home. First day was great. I was very excited. Um, I had the surgery on a Wednesday. It was finished by the afternoon. By the evening, I already walked around with the physical therapist with a walker, and then we went up steps with a cane. So I was hopeful I was going to get to go home the next day. I had this was my left hip I had surgery on, and my right hip I had done in 2017. So I was a little familiar with how everything went with this, but so I was hopeful. On my first surgery, I stayed overnight twice. So I was hoping on this one I would only have to stay overnight once. So I was hopeful the next day I'd be released. And in fact, I was a physical therapist. Got there in the morning, and we went through. I walked a little further, did the steps again, and I was moving real well. No major problems with my incision or anything else. Swelling was under control. Got home, things were looking encouraging there too. I walked around a little bit at home with the walker, did the steps again, so it looked like I was moving good. It's all a blur to me now, so I'm not sure when this started, if it was the second or third day, but my Parkinson's symptoms were getting worse, and well, specifically what was getting worse too was the reliability of the kick-in of my levodopa medication. I had some instances where, I've had delays before, possibly because I had a high protein meal too close to when I had the medication, or it's a little flaky. Everybody's different, but a little flaky with me. Sometimes if I I take the medication, I rest too long, and I don't get up periodically to while the medication is kicking in, the muscles and my brain and my muscles just don't seem to activate, and it either gets delayed or the medication doesn't kick in. But that wasn't really the problem. It just seemed to be happening more frequently, not in the ways that I had experienced before. And then when I wore off, when the medication never kicked in, my movement is not that well when that happens, but it was even worse. I felt almost immobile. And in the past, I've had some problems at night because the medication wears off where I didn't move so well. But in this case, it was the first time in my life where I really felt like totally incapable of moving and getting out of bed. And first time I ever actually had to have somebody help me get out of bed. So I started looking at the medications I was prescribed. I'm on aspirin a couple of times a day to prevent blood clots. They gave me anti-inflammatories. I didn't take in the hospital. I didn't take any opioids. I don't plan on taking any. And I didn't plan on taking any at home, and I didn't. But I took some Tylenol for inflammation, and they also prescribed me Celebrex, which is another anti-inflammatory, and pantoprazole, which is like an acid reducer, or it helps stomach distress, supposedly to protect against like the aspirin therapy and all the other medications that I was taking, which would be a little rough on your stomach. So I was suspecting one of those. Levodopa likes kind of like an acidy environment to take effect and kick in to help absorption. Motility is also a good thing. But so I was doing a little trick where I was taking some vitamin C and some lemon juice, and it would kick in pretty quick doing that. So I was thinking this. I looked up this pantoprazole for the stomach, and it in fact has like an antacid effect. So I just said to myself, "Oh, I'm just going to take these other medications, whatever medications I've left taking. I'll just take them with a meal. Just try to be careful. I asked the doctor if I could eliminate this pantoprazole, so I didn't have to deal with the situation where maybe my stomach wasn't acidic enough to bring the levodopa into my system. effectively. And I asked if I could stop the Celebrex. I said, my pain isn't that bad. I'll ice. I have compression sleeves for my legs, actually electronic ones, not just socks. So which is very, very effective at keeping swelling down. So they said that was okay, and things started getting better. So I suspected that one of the medications was a problem. So when you look at when I'm talking about this limitless thinking, there was no coordination, for instance, between doctors as far as at least all the medications go, like between my Parkinson's movement disorder specialist and my surgeon. They only inquired about my Parkinson's medicine. They asked me to inquire about my Parkinson's medicine because they want you to stop all other medications like before the surgery, and then not start again on only the medications that you really needed. So what happened was they just asked me to ask my movement disorder specialist about Regeneration, and he just said, "Oh, I could stop at the day of the surgery and then just resume at the next dose, and that's fine." But there wasn't any information sent to my Parkinson specialist, and I don't know if he would have picked up on this. Hey, Karl Sterling, he's on. Mi hermano. How's it going down there in Mexico? All right. So I'm telling a little bit of the story of my medication interactions. So there was no coordination with all these medications I was taking. There was no thought about how I don't know the word for it, how quirky a disease like Parkinson's is, and how many considerations there are. They're like limitless considerations. Everybody's different, everybody's different. All people with Parkinson's, they're all different. So it turns out, that I need this more acidic environment to make my medication take effect, and that's something that I don't even know that my movement disorder specialist would have thought about. So that's one thing. So this limitless way of thinking, I think, is even more important for people with Parkinson's, because we have to think of more than just what the standard mainstream medical community does. Everybody responds differently. They find out different things work. I also found out this was like a disaster as far as medication goes. The aspirin I was taking, I have a little bit of AFib, so I was already taking one aspirin, but the surgeons told me to take two. I started getting aspirin overdose symptoms. A couple of nights I was in bed, and this started a little bit before even I gave up the other medication that I just mentioned before. So what happened was, in bed, I felt like I was jumping out of my skin. I don't know how else to describe it. I couldn't sleep. I was just really herky-jerky back and forth. Just felt kind of like when you feel like cranky, like a cranky baby who doesn't want to go to sleep. And I also had some ringing in the ears. So I followed up on some of these symptoms, and they all sounded like aspirin overdose. So I skipped instead of taking the 2 doses of aspirin that the surgeon wanted me to take, I completely skipped a day, and those symptoms diminished big time. So now I found out I had a problem with too much aspirin. So not that I don't know that had anything to do with Parkinson's, but I think another way of thinking that isn't always implemented is that when you have Parkinson's disease, hey, Deb Spreckman, love you. How you doing? When you have Parkinson's disease, there's so many ways things could happen for each person, and the way I like to think of it is when you're diagnosed, you have a diagnosis, it's Parkinson's disease, and then from that point going forward, I just forget about the fact that I have Parkinson's disease whenever there's issues to address. So my limitless way of thinking is that there's a whole world out there that's related to how my body works, how my body moves in the environment, and related to what I ingest into my body, everything I'm exposed to. It's all different, and that's what I'm going to look at. And I'm going to just look at everything from a total health perspective. So this problem, that I had with the aspirin, maybe it wasn't an interaction per se with Parkinson's disease, but it certainly didn't help. Certainly didn't help my movement. It stressed me out, which isn't good for dopamine production. So there's this idea of the indirect effect, I call it. Sometimes you have a problem or you address a problem, and indirectly it's related to Parkinson's disease in a positive or negative way. I've heard stories, for instance, of a client, a personal training client of mine who, he had energy problems, and I told him, some of that could be related to diet and sleep and those type of things. I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe specific supplements for you, or I'm not a dietitian, and I couldn't I could give general recommendations on food, and told him to follow up with his doctor. So when he followed up with his doctor, he came back to me and said, well, you have Parkinson's disease. People with Parkinson's generally have low energy. So I think that's a perfect example of having a limited way of thinking. I think we all need, this is just not with Parkinson's disease. We all need to step outside of that box. I think a great example of that is politics, and I'm not choosing any sides. Everybody has their different views, but we think inside of a box too much, and a lot of times our opinions are really not are kind of based are slanted on our prejudices, and our prejudices come from just information, the limited amount of information that we get. So if you kind of step outside of that box, I think the world could be a better place. And so I'm not just talking about the world of medicine, just in general. I think people need to, it's good to learn and to have a good reliable procedure. But people need to understand that there are situations where the mainstream solution isn't going to work. So another example of this is pain. How many people have chronic pain? And we'll take back pain or stiffness, and where a certain muscle is always stiff all the time. So let's take the example of your hamstrings being tight. So what do people do when they have chronic hamstring tightness? They stretch their hamstrings. So there's nothing wrong with that to feel better, and then a lot of times they feel better right afterwards. But the limited way of thinking there is that kind of like that's a dead end. I'm stuck with tight hamstrings, and I'm going to need to. The solution is I'm going to need to stretch them every time they get tight. So what the solution often is, though, is there's a reason why you're having pain, why your hamstrings are tight. So you need to get down to the reason instead of thinking of where the symptom is and attacking where the symptom is. What are other reasons that you could be having tight hamstrings? And more often than not, I've had this, at least with athletes, is that tight hamstrings are because are basically a reaction to weakness in another area. So when you're running or walking, the main muscle for hip extensions, when you push off that back leg, is your glute muscles. So if those are too weak, your hamstrings are going to take over with something called synergistic dominance, and they're going to actually work harder than they should. So the real solution is not to stretch your hamstring, it's to strengthen, not to stretch your hamstrings, but it's to strengthen your glutes. So I mean that's just an example. And that's a little more obvious, at least if you're a fitness professional. A lot of people do know about what I just said, but there's other examples out there that are where people use out-of-the-box solutions to solve pain, and it's poo-pooed by the mainstream community. So back pain. A lot of times you might have pain in a certain spot, and people keep going to the source, going to the source of the pain, massaging. They'll do it up, and worse yet, they might do an operation. A lot of back operations end up being unsuccessful because you're feeling the pain in the back, and they keep looking at different areas in the back, whether it's the spine or the pelvis or whatever, and they decide you have a little bit of a bulging disc, and that's the problem, and you end up getting an operation, and lo and behold, you still have the back pain. Even though medicine is a science, it's not an exact science. There's a lot of things that happen to us physiologically that could go one way or the other. There's the fight or flight syndrome, and basically what the body does sometimes, the body adapts, and sometimes I think the brain and the body is very smart at times, but sometimes it's dumb. Sometimes you're under so much duress, for lack of a better term, the body just freaks out. So sometimes you're left with pain in an area, and it's mainly due to some sort of trauma, and your brain is just thinking that's where it should send the pain signal. Pain is like a defense. There's other situations where it's a lot more straightforward. You sprain your ankle, it's obvious where the source of the problem is. It's in your ankle. That's true. So there are practitioners out there who are successfully healing pain through multiple techniques, relaxation techniques, understanding the relationship of other parts of the body. Sometimes there's pain in the upper left-hand part of your body, and the source of the pain is really coming from your lower right-hand part because of the way fascia works in your musculoskeletal system. There's all sorts of connections all the way from your feet up to the top of your body with fascia, which is a covering basically that goes over the muscle, that has elasticity, and it helps in movements along with your musculature. So this is all part of the limitless way of thinking. I think that would be great if more and more of this happened in the medical community, and as it relates to Parkinson's, that would be neurologists and even physical therapists and trainers who aren't knowledgeable in this area. It would be great if there was more training in these type of things. That's where information like you get from Karl's book, little plug for Parkinson's regeneration training. It's available on Amazon, or there's a lot of other great people out there doing great things with Parkinson's and exercise and alternative treatments. So the other thing is your own personal outlet. Look, I'd like to cover that as well. As far as this limitless way of thinking is, because what happens sometimes is people get diagnosed with Parkinson's, and they put all their trust in their doctor, and they're prescribed the medication, and they're given a diagnosis and a prognosis, And there's a saying, accept the diagnosis, but don't accept the prognosis. But what happens is people go down this path because they're limited in their thinking. There's a disease, there's a diagnosis. You prescribe some medication or whatever treatment. Usually levodopa to start with, but you prescribe the medication, and then there's expectations of how you'll progress or how the disease will progress, and they're left with that. They're left in that little box, that shamefully little box. I say shamefully because it's a shame. And I'm just, for anybody out there that's listening, just want you to understand that once you've been diagnosed, that's where you should level set. You should take an assessment. You know the type of I'm just specifically talking about movement problems. There's other symptoms too, but you can diagnose what you can and can't do movement-wise, and take this limitless way of thinking in that, okay, you have a starting point. There are things you can do to improve your walking. There are things you can do to get skills back, things that you enjoyed doing that you once, had no problem or had to think about, give a second thought about how you do it. Now you're having problems. Those things would all be turned around, and that's with exercise, and diet is very helpful too. So it's not just medication. Take the medication and go away and wait till you progress and then react by possibly having to get an operation or increase medication so high that you get dyskinesia. The other thought process I would like to see more people adopt is when you're diagnosed, think of the mindset of leverage your strengths and work on your weaknesses. So I kind of talk to the work on your weaknesses part, assessing what you can't do and find ways to improve on those, whether it's enlisting the help of a professional like a physical therapist or a trainer or a nutritionist. But also leverage your strengths. So there are typical things that go downhill with that progress with people with Parkinson's, and one of them is your walking gait. And people who are diagnosed in the early stages, if you are still walking well, that is a tremendous gift. So don't limit your thinking to, I know I have Parkinson's disease, and there's a set of problems that I might have, but I don't have some of them yet, so I'm not going to address them until they start showing up. Please, if you could walk well, start walking and never stop. It's a gift. It truly is a gift. Some people have tremors right away, and those could be overcome with too. There are symptoms you're going to have. That's how you get the diagnosis. Obviously, mine was rigidity, bradykinesia. So I had the very slow movement. I was so stiff, felt like I threw out the worst I ever threw out my back, but like 10 times that, could barely move. So I made the decision after weighing the risks and rewards, of taking the medication. Sometimes people delay medication. That's a personal decision. But then I made a commitment to follow up and find out what I could do to reverse a lot of these symptoms. And there's so many things you could do. If you don't know where to start, buy some books, go on the internet, ask friends, get on Facebook groups, social media, go on YouTube, look for videos. The first day I was diagnosed, I told my family. I was starting to look at stuff I was upstairs on my laptop. My son was downstairs, and he's yelling up the stairs, "Dad, there's a boxing class you can take. It helps people with Parkinson's and so forth." So it was day one, hit the ground running, and that's what I like to see people do. The other thing is I know everyone doesn't like exercise. There are ways to make it more palatable. And that's kind of like a mission of mine this year. Is I'm trying to present topics that it's presented more in a way of improving quality of life, daily tasks of living, and how you could incorporate that into your regular days. So at least to start with, I mean, I'd like to see people to progress so they do exercise every day, but at least to start with, you could do things like, I'm going to call this the chair get up challenge. But when you sit down and stand up in a chair, that's an exercise. You know, it takes a good deal of leg strength, especially if you're struggling with something like Parkinson's. But if you could do it once or twice, what you could do is every day, every time you sit down, say at the table to eat or wherever you're going to sit down, if you're sitting down, do one additional get up and sit down. And then when it's time to get up from sitting down, you get up, sit down, get up again. Just doing that, you might add 20 or so get-ups and extra get-ups or sit-downs in the day. So there's little tricks like that. There's ways to mindfully get through daily tasks of living. So that's actually segueing. I just want to do a time check here. 10:30, so that's pretty good. And maybe as I think of it, I'll interleave back in different thoughts on this limitless philosophy. But my other topic is how to overcome problems with daily tasks of living. And some of that is tied into bradykinesia, which is the slow movement, and tremors, of course. So some tips on that. One thing is first just assess what your weaknesses are, and try to do it in a granular fashion. So if you're taking a particular task, what does it feel like to you? Use words like, I feel slow, I feel weighted down, I feel uncoordinated, I feel like I don't have the right manual dexterity. So one way to address this is just general exercises for whatever your weakness is. So if dexterity is a problem, you could do there's lots of different hand exercises, finger exercises like I'm doing here, opening and closing my fingers, touching my thumb to all the different fingers. There's all different exercises you could do for manual dexterity. So while I'm on that topic, I guess I'll go through some examples of that. And you could do a lot of things with just common objects around the house. So this is a thought process. You could look around and see things around the house and say, oh, I could use that to develop a skill. So one thing is toys and board games. Let me see if I can get my hands in the picture here. So this is something called Mastermind. It's a guessing game. So I use this for manual dexterity. You can start a stopwatch. What I have is a line of colored pegs here. And there's 4 across. So I just made a pattern of 2, 2, 2 all the way down. And what I have to do is I start the clock and I have to match the pattern. So I start the clock and see this is the manual dexterity there that I have to deal with. I have to match the pattern. So there's the green. And then you time yourself. And you can switch hands. Match the pattern, actually. This is a good demonstration because my medication isn't fully on. So I'm going pretty slow. I've done this faster before. Anyway, and then the game also has these smaller, tiny little pegs. So that even requires a little more dexterity. I know sometimes I try to pick up a piece of paper or a dime on the floor or a credit card, and that's very difficult. So that's one little game. You don't have any games or anything, you could always do something like this. You could take, and I take a ton of supplements. You could take some pills, and then you time yourself having to take one out at a time and putting them in another container. So that'll, if you get really adept at that, you'll learn how to get one out at a time, not spill out 4 at once and have to put them back in, which will slow your time down. Do something like that. Another thing that could improve manual dexterity is just taking 2 golf balls in one hand and just twirling them around, looping them one over another. So kind of like you're juggling them within your hand with one hand. So what else takes manual dexterity? Tying a shoe. So now this is gonna go a little bit into mindfulness. So when you're tying a shoe, with everything that you're trying to improve, try to observe exactly what happens on each step. So with me, with bradykinesia, I find that there's certain parts of the process where it matters and doesn't matter. So when I'm just pulling up on the laces like this, no big deal. But then when I start getting into the crossing and tying, the bradykinesia stops me. So what happens with a person with Parkinson's, if you're not mindfully thinking, the bradykinesia, will defeat you more, because you'll just start tying your shoe and you're just saying, oh no, I'm slow, I have Parkinson's and I can't do it. But if you mindfully think and practice, you're going to cross over and you're going to know, this is the point that I normally get slowed on. So wham, I'm going to go fast and I got to do this big loop here. And then think, another problem with people with Parkinson's is small movements. So think big. Got to get this loop big here. There's one. And then this part here, it's got to go fast, got to go around. Break it down. Focus. As I was talking to you, I was talking about this and I looked up, I wasn't focusing. I had trouble pulling the loop. And then fast, tighten it up. So that's just one way of mindfully thinking through a task. Take it step by step. Same thing goes for something like folding clothes. So you're folding a shirt. This is just a warm-up jacket. And I'm not in a great position to do this. Like I said, I'm a little bit off now, but that's a good example. So again, you get stuck with the bradykinesia a lot of times on this part where you're folding the sleeve over and then it just ends up all floppy like this. So really just think, wham, I got to get this out, nice and stretched out, bring it down. And it might be different problems with different people. Get everything straightened out. And I'm not doing this that good because I'm sitting down and doing it. You get the idea. So, okay, another problem is being big, so I want to I'm getting both my hands on both ends here because it's going to flop otherwise. And I'm going to get that over. Bring this here. Again, big and long, this has to come out. So let the bradykinesia take over. I'll be like this and it'll all flop around. And then I noticed, I think this was before I was diagnosed, I'd have a problem getting on clothes, putting on a shirt or a jacket. Same thing with me anyway. Assess the situation. I'm going to put my warm-up jacket on here. So I would get stuck coming around and then the jacket would be all scrunched up. So I'm going to get this first sleeve on, wham, fast. Now I got to get it around, and there, it's on. But if I when I was letting bradykinesia take over, it was coming up like this, and then you end up, it's all caught underneath, and you have to pull it down. So it's just it's focusing and extreme focus. You need extreme focus because this disease, is relentless. You got to be relentless as well. So it's a good practice in general. You're working on a physical task. There goes I just knocked my cane down. That's loud. It's a physical task, but the mental practice is good for you as well, and it'll carry over to other things. So handwriting is another thing. So just practice your handwriting. If you just start writing and people get the extremely small handwriting, you start writing and you're just thinking, well, my handwriting keeps getting smaller. It's gonna keep getting smaller unless you do something to fight against it. So simply just take, I have my little journal here, which has some lined paper in it. So I got some lines here, so smaller lines. So I'll just, if you want, you could just redraw the lines and make them a little wider. So I'll write my name across the 2 lines, and then across the 1. So big, there's one is bigger and one is smaller. So if you're having trouble with them being smaller, go big. Make the line, or maybe cover 4 lines, whatever. But just practice writing bigger and do it slowly and deliberately. Again, when you first start out with the small handwriting, start writing and try to observe what you're doing. You're just not going big enough. You're having trouble. There's other issues. You might have trouble holding the pen, and sometimes if you hold things differently, it makes you focus more. So that's one way. Or you might need, there's special pens for people with Parkinson's. You might need something like that. It doesn't hurt to assist yourself a little too. So another way to assist yourself is I've been talking about bradykinesia and dexterity and that kind of thing. Slow movement. Some people have tremors. So here's a Hypersphere Mini. I just got this actually, vibrating ball. I don't know if you hear the vibration. But this gives you temporary relief sometimes, vibration from tremors. So you just hold the ball, move it in different patterns, squeeze it. Maybe for about 10 minutes you do this. And that we've seen this work in our workshops. We've seen this work with people with tremors, where they've just been sitting. We give the ball to someone who looks like they have a pretty serious hand tremor. They're sitting watching the lecture part of the workshop, maybe for about 15 minutes they've been holding it, and then now we take it away, turn it off, and lo and behold, the tremor has died down a little bit. So anything you could find out about, assisting yourself is fine too. There's a cost to this, but it's certainly worth it with some people. There's also something called touch points, which are like wristwatches, and those vibrate as well. I'm not sure how well, the one person I know who had them said it helped with anxiety. I'm not sure how well it helps with movement. So what are the daily tasks of living? What we talk about? There's folding clothes, writing, there's brushing your teeth. Again, just notice, the motion, the up and down motion, the circular motion. And if you're truly having trouble, you can go to the electric toothbrush, but still practice with a regular toothbrush. And when you get good at that, or if you're good at it already, you could do a mindful task of just using the electric toothbrush or the regular toothbrush, and then switching to the left hand, and that'll help with just wire new circuits in your brain. Okay, so do a time check here. Oh, it's 10:46. How's everybody doing? I haven't looked at comments and questions or anything. Still hanging with me? Yeah, we'll be cutting out in a little minute, in a minute or two. Another topic that I wanted to cover, that I was going to cover in future sessions, to just give you a little preview, is myths and form tips and form tips and tips on alignment for exercise. Fitness myths basically is what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of things in the fitness world that there's that are not, there's procedures and things people go through that are really not science, that have no scientific backing behind them at all, and it's just misinformation handed down from years to years. The fitness industry was dominated more by muscle heads in the many years ago, and it's changed a lot now. But some of the myths still remain, and new ones keep popping up too. So that's something that I want to discuss at a future, in more detail, at a future session. Thinking if there's any other topics, any other tasks that I could cover as far as mindful tasks go. I talked about the use of assistance with the vibrating ball, so that was for like a tremor in the hand area. On the feet, in the foot area too, you could also enhance your movement with assistance in multiple ways. Vibration actually is one of them. You can take this vibrating ball and go in your bare feet and roll your bare foot on top of the vibrating ball, and that'll jack up your sensitivity in your central nervous system, light up those nerve endings, and especially if you walk in bare feet, that's very stimulative because you're more in touch with the ground. If you're wearing footwear, another way to assist in movement is to wear textured insoles. And the brand that Karl and I have had a lot of success with is called Naboso, Naboso. A friend, Dr. Emily Splico, she invented them, and I know they help me now. Actually, I didn't notice it as much before, but I guess the disease has progressed a little bit, and I have more off time. To stimulate, basically what they are is insoles that you use to replace your existing insoles or put on top of your existing insoles in your shoes. And they have little bumps in them, like you're on a little bed of nails. And they stimulate the nerve endings, many nerve endings on the bottom of your feet. So those assist too. And then there's another way. This is sort of a combination of assistance and mindfulness, but although it's kind of tricking your mind, is to use agility dots or even just pieces of tape on the floor as targets. You put these down in a row, and if you walk on the dots, it'll assist you in getting a better stride, because your mind will be focusing just on stepping on the dots and not on the whole complicated process of what it takes to walk, when it used to be something that came natural to you. So speaking of that, progressing next is the task of walking and mindful movement there. This is probably one of the most complicated ones to overcome, because there's so much that goes into the gait cycle, and you could have a lot of problems that are contributing to making it worse. Bad posture, stooping forward is not going to help. So you really need, outside of the mindful movement, you need to work on your posture. Mindfully, think about standing up straight, looking straight ahead, having a big field of vision is going to help a lot. So you could help things out by doing eye tracking exercises, improve your vision. But when it comes down to walking itself, again, this mindfulness, go through that whole process of assessing yourself. What's going wrong? What does it take to walk properly? Get some instruction. It's a great idea to start out with a physical therapist, so they could kind of walk you through, to use the same word, on what it takes to have proper walking form, and just keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. But when I came home from the hospital on my first surgery, I was given a set of crutches. So this time around, I was given a walker. So I've been going between. I was off the walker pretty quick after the first day. I started walking with the cane. But I still use the walker, getting around from place to place, and when I'm off a little bit, gives me a little extra support. And I'm actually thankful for that opportunity I've never used a walker before, because I took it upon myself to observe my walking with the walker, and how the walker assisted me, and the movement of the walker in unison with my body made me realize some things. So one thing they say about walking is really just controlled falling. So I was able to use the walker to kind of increase my stride. What I did was I'd start pushing out the walker. I figured out that if I started pushing the walker first and then let my feet fall forward, sort of just like follow, like I'm chasing the walker with my feet, that kind of got my stride going. So that was interesting. So that was a nice experience in mindful movement. But walking, mindful walking is something I started on before my hip operation, so I'm going to start that project up again. There's a man named John Pepper, so look him up. There's some YouTube videos, but there's a whole chapter on his story in this book, The Brain's This is the Brain's Way of Healing by Norman Deutsch. And he also wrote a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. This one's called The Brain's Way of Healing. And there's a chapter from this man, about this man, John Pepper, and he reduced his Parkinson symptoms significantly by doing this conscious walking, very fast walking, and mindfully. So he basically observed what he was doing and just figured out all the different steps. You know, I need to push off with my toe on that back foot and extend the leg, syncing up the arm swing. So I had started this project. I wanted to try to mimic what John Pepper was doing, because if I could get success at this, then I might, you know, it might inspire a whole bunch of other people who don't want to go through a complicated exercise regimen to reduce their symptoms. They could just do it with walking. That would be great. So before I curtailed the project, I figured some things out, and some of them, you know, maybe some people who don't play around with human movement and fitness, you know, wouldn't have figured out. But if you keep observing yourself, though, you'll be surprised what you could figure out about your own body. But I came up, you know, with some tricks to help my stride. I started testing out walking when my medication wasn't on. I had one problem with arm swing, where I couldn't get my arms in sync with my legs. And I know that with, you know, if you observe, and another thing I just thought of when I just said this, is observe how well you move when you're at your best, and observe how other people move, who move well, who may not have Parkinson's disease or other problems. That's another good way of implementing mindful movement, learning from yourself, like when you move better, what's happening, and from other people. You can take videos of yourself, like I said, observe others. So I noticed that when I walk with the alternate arm swing, you know, that it involved a little bit of twisting, you know, of the torso, and that, you know, when your left leg goes forward, your right arm also goes forward, and your left arm goes back. How that's synced up. I tried to mindfully do that with a big arm swing, and it wasn't working. So I said to myself, well, this is kind of like a natural thing that happens. Let my arms just hang down and see how much happens naturally. So this is the observation part of the mindful thinking. And I saw that without me even thinking about arm swing, just moving my legs, that there was a certain amount, it was very small, but a certain amount of natural movement in my arms. So I said to myself, I'm just going to let this happen, and I'm going to feel it, observe it, and then when the time was right, I said, okay, I think I understand what's happening here. Let me try to consciously increase the amplitude of my arm swing. And I did that, and I got it back. If I consciously just tried to coordinate all that, contra movement of one limb moving forward, the other moving back, and all that, I might not have been able to do it. So the observation thing is important because you might find ways to leverage things that are kind of working already. You just have to kind of take a step back like I did, where I just let the small movement take over. It was still valid movement. It just wasn't big enough. And then I had to add the big part and the speed, and it all came back. So, do a time check. I think we're just about done here. I think I'm going to wrap it up with that. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take a look for a little while. But I hope you got something out of this. I tend to ramble from topic to topic, but I think sometimes that free association is good to, as long as you're relating one thing to another. I hope everybody has a great day. For a couple more minutes, and I'll be signing off. Okay, have a great one, everyone. Adios.